Pixel 6 and a Pixel 6 Pro. They're both pretty huge phones, but the Pixel 6 Pro is a little bigger, around 6.7 inches. It has glossy metal rails and
Google is announcing the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro today, though it might be better to call it a preview or a tease. Rather than releasing all the small print on its new Android phones, Google is instead putting the main target on the new system on a chip which will be inside the new Pixels. It's called the Tensor SoC, named after the Tensor processing units. Google uses it in its data centers. Tensor is an SoC, not a single processor, and so while it's fair to call it Google designed, it's also still unclear which components are Google made and which are licensed from others. Two things are definitely coming from Google: a mobile TPU for AI operations and a replacement Titan M2 chip for security. The rest, including the CPU, GPU, and 5G modern, are all still a mystery. Google is really finally trying to form a competitive flagship phone. This fall, Google will release two slightly different Pixel phones, the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. If the ultimate versions are anything just like the prototypes I saw last week, they're going to be the primary Pixel phones that don't desire their sandbagging when it comes to build quality. We knew we didn't have what it took to be within the ultra-high end, Austereo admits, and this is often the primary time where we desire we actually have it. Both versions of the Pixel were glass sandwiches with fit and finish that are finally within the same league as what Samsung, Huawei, and Apple need to offer. We've not been within the flagship tier for the past couple of years. This may vary, said Osterloh. He also admits that it will definitely be a premium-priced product, which I fancy means north of $1,000. Google is merely sharing a couple of the key specs for every phone, leaving the small print for later, likely October. Google also wouldn't allow us to require photos or video of the devices during our meeting. Display and camera lens. If all Google were doing was rescuing the Pixel line from doldrums of the mid-range, that might be significant but not worth a month's early pre-announcement. The most important part of the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro is that Google is using that new Tensor SoC inside. The computers of the longer term are getting far more heterogeneous than they need within the past, Osterloh argues. He has for years been signaling that the top of Moore's law will mean that computers and phones will got to be built differently. There'll be tons more specialized sub-elements to the planning to be ready to do things in specific ways. This is a consequence of raw computing power running out of headroom or growing more slowly than the sorts of processing we would like to try to do with AI, he says. The most important of these chips may be a mobile version of a Tensor processing unit. Google has been making TPUs for its server farms for over 5 years now, dedicating to more efficiently performing AI and ML tasks. It offered an edge version of its TPU for enterprise solutions a few years ago, but the Pixel 6 marks the first time Google has put a mobile TPU in a phone. So what can the new TPU inside Tensor actually do? Google had a small handful of demos. The first two were, unsurprisingly, associated with photography. Using ML to form better photos has historically been an enormous advantage for Pixel phones.
Growing in the background was this Whitechapel project of Google designing their own silicon to eventually go into the Pixel phone. This turned out to be true. So there's a couple different benefits to this,
but in recent years, progress has stagnated, and competitors have caught and surpassed the Pixel, and much surpassed it when it involves video. Google clearly wants to require back the crown and thinks the TPU is that the thanks roll in the hay. The first demo Google showed was a blurry photo of a toddler. The kid was moving because that is what kids do. A second version of the photo was the same but run through Tensor's TPU, and the kid's face was sharper. This problem is a very difficult smartphone camera physics problem. We're trying to show those sorts of problems into data problems where we will solve them with Tensor. It wasn't a deepfake.
Their algorithms, they can of course improve the glass and of course the iris opening every year, but generally it's been the same sensor, and I suspect they were reluctant to change it because
What the Pixel 6 does is run the method of snapping a bunch of photos from the most sensor and mix them into one HDR image. But now the Pixel 6 also has the ultra-wide grab a quick, sharper image to capture that detail. Then the TPU recognizes that there's a face and then combines the ultra-wide's image with the rest. But impressive image demos are a dime a dozen these days. Google itself famously promised to get rid of chain-link fences from photos in 2017, but never delivered. The promise of Tensor is to deliver better results more quickly, since the SoC is meant to more efficiently run data through the TPU. It's right to be skeptical until we get a chance to test the camera ourselves. It's necessary to be skeptical of the Pixel 6's video abilities, given the Pixel line's history of mediocre video, but Google's second demo didn't make skepticism easy. It was an easy pan across a beach, with the setting sun fully in frame for much of the shot. As an HDR video, it was challenging. Google found out a rig with the Pixel 6, Pixel 5, and iPhone 12 Pro Max and shot an equivalent pan with all three. As you would possibly expect during a demo provided by Google, video from Google's new phone looked the simplest.
They may launch it in India later on. See, of course, I'll be importing this one for sure, so lots of content coming in about Pixel 6 series, the comparison with me.
In addition to the TPU, the Pixel 6 will also have a newer version of Google's Titan M security chip. In the blog post announcing the Pixel 6, Google is going so far as to say that with Tensor's new security core and Titan M2, Pixel 6 will have the most layers of hardware security in any phone, with a footnote that the claim is based on account of independent hardware security subsystems and components. Finally, Osterloh says there will be an always-on computer that will handle low-level, low-power processes like the ambient display. The battery life target for the Pixel 6 remains only all day, however. It's the first time Google has truly pulled out all the stops for a Pixel phone, but will that be enough?
Well, that's a big deal. I think it's particularly important for the Pixel line, specifically because of how much Google does with software and
It has been 5 years since Google started making Pixel phones, and nearly every single one of those years, I've asked some variation of the same question. Is Google really serious about hardware? Does it intend to be a real competitor and make real money? Or is it the entire effort just a rehashing of the old Nexus strategy? Or, to use a newer reference, is that the Pixel line just during a quiet pantry mode, kept alive just in case it's ever needed for real? I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let us know your views in the comment section below. Until the next video, stay tuned and subscribe to our channel for more uploads like this. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, then do it now.
They had the same reaction when she first heard about it. She's like, was talking about the pictures and she felt, she wasn't represented correctly. And so I'm glad we addressed